What's happening, Wargamers? Welcome to our quick hot potato take on Star Wars Shatterpoint. Full disclosure, I was lucky enough that AMG actually sent me an early copy of this to get painted up and share some thoughts and some content on, so that is what we're doing. You will be able to find a paired battle report to go with this as well. But today, I have Troope joining me, and the two of us, we're actually fresh off the game. We played a struggle to kind of practice and see what was going on, just so we didn't make complete total fools of ourselves on camera. But yeah, let's quickly chat the game. So there's a whole bunch of goodies here. Like you can see, just all these different things laid down here. We have the various struggle mission cards. We have the various character cards, different form stances. You know, we have the struggle tracker itself, range rulers, tokens. The character cards for how you determine what's it called? The activations. Yeah,
activation
character
order.
activations. Yep. More of the things over here. We have a very awkward sort of shove token, which actually it's more useful than I would have thought.
Yeah.
We got our dice, which you can see differ from MCP. We got some 6-sided dice and some 8-sided dice, and then we got all these lovely models that I was able to get painted up in time for all this. So we are just going to share some of our thoughts on Crisis Protocol. So the first...
this is Shatterpoint.
Actually. This is Shatterpoint. Yeah. I just totally lost any future support. So yeah, we're going to share some thoughts on Shatterpoint, being fresh off the game. And I mean, at the very end, I'm going to ask whether or not you like it or not.
I like the game.
Oh, I actually just skipping right to the end there.
But we have a lot more to talk about before we get to that.
Right. So I think we need to kind of just structure this a little bit as we go forward. So let's start with the general components, because we get a lot of stuff in this box. This is a big box, right? Because it comes with a good chunk of terrain. That's not even all of it. There's some more gantries that have come with it. The rocks actually come from another expansion pack of terrain. They're not in the core box. But you get these great little boxes down here, a whole bunch of ladders, gantryways, all these cards. Like pretty much everything but the rocks is what you get in the core box. So right off the bat, it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's good value.
Yep.
Whether or not it's your value remains to be seen. A lot of people don't necessarily like the idea of paying for the terrain.
Of course.
And let's not mince words. It's an expensive box.
It is.
I can't speak for the U.S. prices. I'm not 100% sure on those, but I think Canadian MSRP is like $170.
Yeah.
And that's a pricey box, especially coming off Crisis Protocol, which I think is $110 Canadian, right? Yeah. So obviously, if you're south of the border in the States, I think we're about like 25-30% more after everything is said and done. So for everything you get in the box, where do you stand on the value of it, Troope?
My biggest gripe about the terrain is that a lot of times it looks like generic sci-fi terrain. I do appreciate, now that I've played it, that this plays very differently from something like Marvel Crisis Protocol terrain, or even like Warhammer or any of the other games. So while when I first looked at the price on this box and thought of the terrain, I'm like, I don't even like that terrain. This terrain's actually important for this game and actually has a big impact on it. So I've softened on my concerns about the price of that terrain.
I do remember we had a lot of early discussions about that. Yeah. I will say, now that I've actually gotten my hands on the terrain, I've put it together, I've painted it, it's not awful.
Yep.
It's actually pretty decent terrain, if a bit generic.
Yes. Well, and there's some classic Star Wars doors, there's some little pads, there's some controls with knobs and levers that are definitely very Star Wars that I didn't see when I was looking at those promotional pictures.
That's fair. Yeah, there's enough little details that does help kind of give that Star Wars look. I'm a little disappointed that, and this is all things Star Wars, that once again it feels like we have gone back to Tatooine or Tatooine adjacent.
Yes. Well, see, I was the rocks make me believe that this is Geonosis.
Fair.
But the buildings don't quite match up with that.
Yeah. And I do feel Star Wars has a bad habit of leaning a little bit too heavily on the desert motif.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, sure, it's supposed to be samurai Western, aesthetic. And
okay, you got to remember, it's really cheap to shoot in the desert. So that's why, right?
Yes, so, very true. But it's, I'm excited for what might be coming down the road terrain-wise.
Yep.
I would love to see, terrain that looks like it's the interior of a Star Destroyer. I'd love to see I'd love to see terrain for like level 1313
Yes.
of Coruscant,
Yep.
right?
Or like even if you get some random starport style terrain, right?
Starports, Naboo maybe, for instance, Mustafar.
Yep.
Like there's so many rich places that they can kind of go with it. Geez, Endor.
Yeah. Well, hey, we'll have certain little bears join us on that one, right?
We know Ewoks are coming around, and you know Vader's going to come in and domesticate the little buggers.
Of course.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of really cool places they can go with the terrain. Whether or not they're able to kind of capture the verticality that they want in it remains to be seen, but I think there is that possibility.
Yes.
And I'm hopeful for that.
Yep.
I really am. Especially because the way it played, I don't feel that the verticality of it was really ever a hindrance beyond when we would accidentally knock some terrain.
Yes.
And okay, well let's quickly chat that. Because if you look at this terrain, you'll notice that some of the platforms have grooves, others do not. Troope, how many times did we knock that bridge over?
Well, when you say we, you mean me.
I'm trying to be nice, man.
I definitely knocked it over at least 4 times, and every time, poor Darth Maul, I was gasping like, oh, is he dead? Did I kill him finally?
Every time it's like, oh no, the lightsaber.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely some elements of the terrain that if there was more of these notches, and the instructions said build it this way, if there were more of those notches, I feel it probably would have been a little bit more secure.
Yeah.
But part of it could also just be, you know what, we just need to get used to this terrain as well.
Yep.
We also played with kind of a dense, everything was kind of packed in the middle, right?
Yes.
And I don't think every game is going to be that way.
No, I think it's going to need a little bit more configurations than what we were running with that first time.
Right. And we're fortunate enough now that with where we currently play, we do have some other options that will hopefully be seeing the camera at some point or another, just for some variety. Okay, so while on the topic of plastic, let's talk about the models themselves.
Yeah, okay.
And so these are all 40 millimeter models.
Yes.
They're all on 40 millimeter bases, except for the B1 battle droids, which are on 50 mil. The first point I'm going to say is all the humanoid characters went together very nicely.
Okay.
The droids, however, were a bit of a pain, and they had very shallow connection points. I felt that the little sockets that they made for them, they didn't quite socket in all the way, especially when using plastic glue.
Yep.
I think what was happening is that they did have sort of a firmer socket, but the plastic glue just kind of melted it.
Okay.
And as a result, it didn't sit firmly. So I found that problem with the droids. I even built the Magna droids, the Magna Guard, and had that problem with those guys as well. But aside from that, they all assembled very nicely, very easily. Did not really need the instructions for a lot of them, which was good. The other one I'll quickly point out, and then I'll get all your opinions on it. Those lightsabers are flimsy, man.
They are so flimsy.
They are flimsy. I had panic attacks when building like Ghost Rider or Storm for Crisis Protocol. These things make me so much more paranoid that they're going to snap.
Yeah. I will also say that I felt a little jealousy. I looked over at your clone troopers who they seem to have different body poses. Look at your night owls. They're great. My super commandos were great. And then I looked at my droids and they have all the exact same poses.
Oh, they're droids.
Yeah, but
they're manufactured, man. Like they're mass produced. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I really feel like there could have been some poses there that could have really.
They did effectively come with 2 of each pose, right?
Yeah.
It's 2 of the. You'll notice I'm missing the kneeling droid. That's because I lost an arm to the void that is my couch.
Yeah.
Could not find it.
I kind of wish that there was like a group of running battle droids versus a more defensive set of battle droids.
We might see something.
Yeah.
Right? We might see something.
It was more a critique of the particular plastic in this box rather than anything else, but.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I would say generally speaking, though, like all the poses look pretty good. There's a couple poses I don't care for. This little super commando, meh. We've seen the kneeling pose a bunch of times. Who cares? And Kalani is, I'm kind of half and half.
Yeah,
Kalani
looks like a little bit of a power pose there, and
but meanwhile, you look at like say, Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, Maul, Asajj, Anakin, like all the Jedi. Actually, all of the primaries and secondaries, except for Kalani, where there's some nice dynamism to them, right?
Yeah.
They feel like they're doing something. I look at that pose and yes, that feels like something that they do, which I really like. I really dig that particular aspect of it.
I'm going to say for all the models that have faces, those faces all match up exactly the way I wanted them to with the personality of the characters as well. So.
Oh yeah, and you know what? The detail on the faces is actually pretty solid as well.
Yeah.
A little part of me kind of regrets I didn't go with some more of the faces, like namely on like Gar Saxon, who could have had a helmet or could have not had a helmet. Actually, that's the only one.
Him having the spiky head means I knew which one he was because there was a whole bunch of weird super commandos that were Imperial / Separatist.
Because the shield wasn't a giveaway.
Mandos all have shields. It's fine.
But no, the models themselves are really nice. I enjoyed each and every one of them. They were all actually rather fun to paint, which I was very surprised by. One thing I'm kind of dreading a little bit is that there's a lot of Galactic Republic boxes coming out that have a lot more clone troopers.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already gotten the Hello There box, which has Cody and his troopers. I think Luminera comes with some more. Okay. I think there's a box coming that's going to come with like some commandos, although those I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
So there, we are definitely going to see some repetition in this because it looks like the way they're releasing is going to be like squad, so primary, secondary supports. But I think there's still a lot that they can do with it, and I think we're going to see them really kind of shine when it comes to those primaries and secondaries.
Yeah.
I think the Jedi are really going to look sharp. I think the Sith are going to look great. Bounty Hunters, when they eventually hit, they're looking good.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the Inquisitors.
Yes, me too.
I'm really looking forward to them. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked the plastic. We've talked the terrain. All these other components, how do you feel about the character cards?
I'm gonna go ahead and say the first time you look at these cards, you're gonna be like, okay, what? What is this? Why does this do this?
Right.
And there's a lot of icons in this game.
There are. That was actually a big stumbling point for me as well.
Yeah. Currently my biggest gripe is the difference between pinned, push, and pin, shove, and dash. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, those are all very, very similar.
And they all can show up on your attacks, and you're like, oh yeah, I get double push here. Nope. That actually is a pinned. You are pinned and then pushed.
Well, actually, like right there. So we have the pin, we have the push right there, right? And you're absolutely right. There's a lot of icons that are just close enough that if you're not paying attention, it becomes a little distracting.
Yeah, and I guess I had a little bit of self-sabotage because I looked at the blood and I'm like, yep, he's bleeding. No, that's not bleed. That's strain.
Yep, it's strain, which is, I mean, similar mechanic. You know, you move and you take 3 damage versus like you finish an activation.
Yeah.
But yeah, these cards are very different than what I'm used to seeing on a lot of stuff, right?
So I will say I think it's dense in information, but once you've kind of played with them once or twice, you kind of already know what's going on for most of your stuff. The big areas you're going to be looking at is over in your triggers.
Your expertise.
Yeah, off your expertise, and then going down these little charts.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's anytime we had to stop, it was usually because we were reviewing something on the forum cards.
Yeah.
Which is, I think these are actually really interesting things to have in the game.
Yep.
But until you're used to them, right?
And the reason they're called form cards is because your primaries actually can choose 2 different sides.
Yeah, there's 2 stances,
which is
cool.
Yeah, like I didn't really understand the difference between a primary and a secondary, other than how you create squads and stuff like that. And I could honestly be like, I don't understand what was going on when I was reading the rulebook.
Yeah, so for everyone at home who might be watching this to kind of glean what's going on, the way the strike teams are designed is you will always have 2 squads, and the squads will always be made up of a primary, secondary, and supports. With your primary always having this little thing right here, which is basically 8 points that you can then spend on your secondary and your supports, which I don't know if we have. Yeah, they're around somewhere. So we got the Mandalorians, for instance, who come with a 4-point cost, and then we have a secondary. I'm just going to grab. Oh, you have Kalani right there.
Yeah, there's Kalani.
And then we have Kalani, who is 5 points.
Yeah.
So I mean, this particular configuration isn't a valid one because obviously that's 9 points to the 8. But that's how you build your squad, and you have 2 squads in your strike force.
Yeah.
And it creates some. It's not as flexible as a lot of other games are. You're very much locked into a couple key pieces, but it's also kind of interesting. I think that's just a piece of the puzzle that you kind of have to figure out. And as we get more pieces released, I think it's going to feel a lot more open
Yeah,
than what
I
it currently
agree.
does.
I agree.
Because we just kind of went with the bog standard box lowdowns for this, right? But we're looking at down the road. We have the Inquisitors, we have the Ewoks coming. There's the crew of the Ghost coming.
Yep.
More Jedi, more clones. So there's going to be a lot more versatility coming down the road for it, which is really nice. And then some characters will actually have nice little synergies with various stuff.
Yep.
So if we grab Bo-Katan over here, like Bo-Katan has a bunch of things where when she activates, other Mandalorian characters get to do something. When they end movement, other within range of other Mandalorians, stuff happens. With Kalani, he gets droids to do other things for him. So there's lots of neat little things, and they have the keywords down at the bottom to kind of help you figure out what's going to activate and what's not going to activate.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right. Like when you're not used to the card, it's a lot of information coming at you.
Yep.
And you have no idea what's going on with it. Like I think we had to look up protection and steadfast at least 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Right? And then look up what some of these symbols mean as well. But once you kind of get used to it, I would say our last 2 struggles flowed a lot faster.
Yep.
Because we had an understanding of what was happening.
Yeah, I think the first time we just fired off a struggle to try to figure it out and do all the stuff for it, and I think every time we've encountered certain things, it's like, oh, what's this keyword mean? What's this do? What's that do? Be prepared if you're starting to play a game of this. You're gonna have the rule book on hand to do a little bit of work.
Yeah, and you know what? Okay, that's actually something else I want to touch on. I like the rule book for this one a lot more than the Crisis Protocol rule book. For 2 reasons. First off, this feels like a full rule book.
Yep.
Right? I haven't looked at the digital one to see how much there is in the way of differences, so I'm not 100% sure there. But this feels more like a full rule book. The other big things that they have, first off, throughout the way, they have like their little snippets, which give nice little things that kind of point out a particular point of interest, which is really nice. And then we have this really nice quick reference thing right on the back.
Yeah, like as soon as it was like, yep, turn sequence, attack sequence. These are the icons.
Oh my goodness, the icons.
Every other turn, we're looking at those icons, right?
Yeah, so the icons was really important. And the other really good thing to notice is that you just open up the back cover and you got the timing chart right there.
Yeah.
And anyone who's played an AMG game, the timing chart is key. It is both your best friend and your nightmare all at the same time. But this will answer so many questions about how things interact with it. And it is so important just kind of get familiar with that particular timing chart. But yeah, the rule book was a much nicer resource than the Crisis Protocol one. I felt like it was more of a guide.
Yep.
And it was very helpful.
I felt like any question we had actually was found in the rule book.
Sometimes it took us a little bit to find it.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say we were able to pretty much answer any question we had. Let's talk about some of the components we have here.
Yeah, okay.
So let's talk the movement tools.
Okay.
So we got the range tools and we got the movement tools. And the first thing you'll notice that these are very similar to Crisis Protocol.
Well, they look similar.
Well, that's why I said they're similar. So you'll notice that the range tools are pretty much the same.
Yes.
3 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches? Something like that? Something like that. So those are nice, and then you got the 1 inch on the edges there. The movement tools, however, this was our first thought was like, hey, maybe these are just like short and medium from Crisis Protocol. But the advanced tool is a little bit shorter.
Yep.
And I don't think we actually compared the dash tool there.
No, I don't think we did.
Yeah, it's a little bit too far away to grab at the moment. But that's actually an interesting aspect of this game. Unlike Crisis Protocol, which has the 3 different move actions you can do, like your short, your medium, and your long. Oh, there we go. That's pretty close, but it's a little bit shorter.
Yeah, the
Crisis Protocol one. In this particular game, any advance you do, there's just the 1 movement.
Yep.
And then you have this one for like dashes, jumps, pushes, or not pushes, but dashes, jumps, and other type things.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. So the difference in movement abilities actually comes down to your powers, your active abilities, your reactive abilities, and that's where you really start seeing the difference in speedy characters.
I 100% agree. And then they also have this little tool here, the shove tool,
This shove tool.
It's kind of cool because like it's here's a 1. You can do it on an angle, especially for reaching down by gantryways. You can
it made
do
it
it
a
down
lot.
here.
Yeah, it made it a lot easier to do shoves because we had a lot of shoves happening underneath that gantryway.
Yeah.
So it feels like a bit of an awkward tool, but it is actually a pretty good tool.
Yeah,
I think in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, so those are the range and movement tools and everything like that. Some of the other components we have, obviously, we have all these different tokens. Damage tokens, I would have liked to see a 3.
Yeah, a 3 and some more 1s. Some more 1s is definitely something I wish was in there.
Yeah. Otherwise, I do like that there's less overall tokens than Crisis Protocol.
Yes.
Like for instance, these are all double-sided.
Yeah, and so effectively it's just 2 tokens that you just flip over as you need. Now, we definitely had times where a character had all 4 of them, and that was a bad time for them. But but the other cool thing is, usually after a character activates,
it shakes 1. Well, after it's injured, sorry. Yeah.
Well, no, but I was going to say like most of the things like strain. After you activate, you lose 3 things.
Yes. They'll fall off as soon as they've done their job.
Yeah.
So with strain, you try to move, you take the damage, it goes away.
You're not moving tokens all around the board the whole time.
Yeah. Like with expose, you roll your defense, it goes away. You don't get your exactly, and that's actually a really nice touch. I do like that they're very transient. In that regard. And not something you constantly have to be worrying about. So they're very powerful, but they're very, very quick effects.
Yes.
Which is nice. And then one aspect of the game I don't feel like we really got to tinker around with was cover.
Yes.
And I don't know if that was just the way the board was built or what, but it just...
Yeah, we seem to hit a lot of mosh pits in the middle. Yeah. And that was kind of... Yeah.
And there were instances where, like Hunker, for instance, which is kind of like just mobile cover.
Yep.
You can hunker down as an action. You can take cover. It is nice that option is there, so you don't just get shot off the table so quickly. But it just, in our particular game, I didn't feel that it played a huge role in it, either cover or hunker, which unfortunate, but again, that's probably the nature of how the board was built.
Yeah.
More than anything else, right? So then you also got these like injured and wound tokens.
Yep.
Just nice, not really much to say about them. They're nice, easy ways of tracking where your character's at.
Now, I do actually have a complaint about them specifically.
Okay.
For Separatists things, they kind of blend in with a lot of the colors on my sheets.
Oh, fair enough.
And it definitely felt like there was a little bit too much blue. Like, wait. Which one of those is this? Oh, shoot. Yeah, he's actually injured right now.
A lot of red.
Yeah.
A lot of red. No, that's fair enough. Other tokens we have these obviously show, well, not obviously, but these are basically what denotes who's controlling an objective.
Yep.
So, and actually, let's quickly talk about that because I actually kind of dig that mechanic. All these objectives are sticky objectives.
Yes.
You control it until somebody takes it from you.
Yes, and they can only take it from you if they have more on it than you do at the same elevation.
Yes, that was something that I think we really kind of messed up on our first practice game.
Yes.
But got a little bit better with it. It's a very interesting mechanic, but I feel that it allows you to engage a lot more with the game.
Yes.
As a result.
Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, because it allows you to take an objective and then keep pushing forward.
Yes.
Right? Which is really nice.
I also really like the mechanic. These are the objective tokens, and they turn off and turn on depending on what's going on for your particular mission.
Yeah,
right?
So you set up 9 of them on the turned off side at the start of the game, and then depending on the mission that you're playing, you'll see you have different layouts for how they all work. Now, hopefully we did this all correctly, but that's all part of like struggle 1 right there. Yeah. And it's a very interesting way of doing it. It's very dynamic. The only downside is that we only have the 1 mission pack.
Yes.
At the moment, right? So the second we start seeing more mission packs and players can actually build or at least use a pack that might feel a little bit more akin to how they want to play, it's going to become a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. And then like as you go further into the struggles, you start getting different priorities and you roll one of your 6-sided defensive dice and you find out where the priority is and that one's worth an extra 1.
Yeah.
Which actually mattered a lot in our game.
And it was such a very different way of approaching objectives than a lot of other games that I've played have had.
Yeah, I liked it. At first, I'm not sure how I feel about it.
Yep.
But as we started playing about it, like even though you completely ran the table with me in round two, and because you got a lot of the principal objectives, right?
Yep.
It actually came down to the point where it put me in a position where I was able to do something cool.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
another round, right?
Yeah. Needing to, and it forces you to change your play on the go, and I like that a lot.
It's very dynamic.
Yeah.
It's very dynamic. I like that. Like we had one game, the game we played, Bo-Katan ran over here, and, like all over the place. Ahsoka went like all the way around the table here.
Yeah, and she actually darted back and forth between two objectives because she had to for that turn. So
Yeah.
I think this game definitely gives a lot of value to movers who can do a lot with their turn.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that they created a really cool game that, in addition to being a bash and brawl, where you're definitely like, how much damage can Darth Maul deal to this particular model?
The answer is a lot.
There is also like, well, it's great that he did that damage, but how are you going to get your objective today?
Yeah. So, okay. So let's talk about the struggle tracker
yes.
for a moment.
Yeah.
This is, I think, of all the design space that they have in this game, this is probably the most interesting one. Because the way it basically works is this is how you track who's kind of winning and struggling in the game. Anytime you're ending your turn, and this is actually another very interesting aspect, anytime you end your turn outside of the first turn of the first struggle, you will score points equal to the number of objectives you're holding.
Yep.
And then the other person on their turn will do the same. And it'll go back and forth. There are certain mechanics that might give you these little black tokens, which are momentum tokens. So whenever you would wound somebody on the opposite team, you'd get a momentum token. Anytime your turn would end and the struggle tracker is on the other player's side, you'd get yourself a momentum token. If it ever ends on 0, you'd both get a momentum token. And there's little ways of just adding more momentum. When you go into a new struggle, both teams get a momentum token. And the whole idea is you're basically just trying to get this little cube right to the end of your track. And there's all sorts of little ways of doing it, like just scoring more points. Anakin, whenever he wounds somebody, will score a point on it as well.
Yep.
And it goes back and forth quite a bit.
I was really impressed with that element of the game. I originally thought that it felt super unfair when I was just reading the rules and not actually having myself immersed in it. And now that I've played it a little bit, I'm like, huh.
It was nice.
Yeah, this actually adds a very different dynamic to the game, and definitely very different from the back and forth I was imagining it as.
Well, there was actually, I would say the third round was very interesting because you started off strong with your third round and you started getting some points on your side, and then I had a couple really good activations, and I was able to push it back, get a good days in there.
Yep.
And I was able to actually come back and I felt in the game.
What's funny is, in that period, though, I think I got myself down to like, there was only like 3 spots on my side of the track, and I legitimately could have just like won the game from one onto your side of the track going the other way.
Yeah, if I hadn't been able to pull off what I did, and you just turned around and you could have just gone hog.
Yeah, so
you had a very easy injury ahead of you. And that would have put you in a great position to take a couple objectives.
Yeah, I really like the idea that it feels like even if you are on the back foot, you're not out of the game.
Yeah, it's actually a really, really cool element to it. I like it a lot more than I thought I would. Because like you, I had some hesitancy on it. But I enjoyed it. It was good. It was really good for that one. So go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, do we want to talk about the Shatterpoint cards?
Yeah. Okay. So let's quickly chat these cards right here. So these are how you determine who is activating. Basically, you'll have cards for each character, so primary, secondary, and support in your strike team. Plus, you're going to have this little Shatterpoint card. You shuffle them up. You see they all have the same backing on there. You shuffle up and you top deck them, and that determines who's going. You have some ways of manipulating. You can put them in reserve for 1 force, or if you pull the Shatterpoint card, you can pay 1 force, put it in the bottom, and top deck another card. So you do have some manipulation of it. I will say that I'm not entirely sold on the random aspect of it.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I definitely felt like some elements of the game felt like they were in the hands of the Force and not in the hands of a player.
Yeah, without spoiling anything.
Yeah.
But there was one or two instances where cards that got top decked were extremely important.
Yes.
Uh,
And sometimes it'll feel like you top deck a specific character early on in the game, and you're like, yeah, drat. Okay, they're not going to be able to do as much.
right.
And
Well, okay, so good a case in point on that one. In one of our rounds, Rex was like my very last activation, and he was the one that had like all my support stuff.
yeah,
If he could move one of my people, he could do some other fun stuff, and he was like last or second to last or something like that, and it was just whatever.
yep,
Which is unfortunate, but it's also it's something you got to plan around. I would like a little bit more ability to manipulate it. I think
yes,
not a lot, just a little bit more.
yep.
On that one. But honestly, I don't have an answer. I don't have a solution for what I would like to see on that one.
Yeah, it's tough when you're like, I definitely feel this way about it, but I definitely don't know what's going to make it better.
Now, I will say there was a moment where it was incredibly exciting. Didn't know what was happening. The Shatterpoint card came up. And it was very exciting to see that happen.
So what happens when you get a Shatterpoint card?
So when you get a Shatterpoint card, basically you can activate any of your characters, even if they have already activated for that particular round of cards, which is, again, really cool. If one of your characters happens to have been wounded, you can use the Shatterpoint card. You can move them from wounded to injured, get rid of their damage tokens, get rid of a condition, and just start activating them with them again. So it's basically your wild card, right? And that's really nice. It's really good to have that sort of thing, and it can create a really cool moment.
Well, and it also means whatever character you end up using with the Shatterpoint, you're going to also draw their card as well. So it kind of gives them a double activation in that I'm putting quotes around this round.
Yeah, and that can actually be a big deal as well. I was always dreading the possibility of like a Maul or Ventress card being drawn, then a Shatterpoint just to have them go again, right?
Yeah.
Scared the ever living bejesus out of me. But yeah, it's an interesting mechanic. I don't hate it.
No.
I don't hate it. I just want a little bit more influence on it.
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah, of course.
And we might see that. Like, I mean, there's a lot of Force users coming that might have stuff. I think Kenobi comes with an ability that allows him to manipulate it a little bit.
Okay.
Which is really kind of cool. So I think it's definitely within the realm of possibility that we will see some more options for it. But it was really neat. So actually, let's talk another mechanic here, Force.
Yes.
So the Force does not operate the way one would normally think. It is not exclusive to Force users. Instead, what's going to happen is your primary characters are going to have certain Force values, and you're going to get tokens equal to that amount.
Yeah.
So Ahsoka, Ventress, Maul, they all have 3 Force tokens. Anakin has 4.
Yeah.
So depending on your combination, you'll get a certain amount of them. Any character can actually make use of these Force tokens. It's used to activate their active abilities and their reactive abilities.
Yep.
And they range from maybe being able to have somebody reposition, or in Anakin's case, getting the second attack in on a character he's already gone hard into.
Yep. Ventress uses it to push people away, and Maul uses it to pull people towards him.
Yeah. So it's basically how you activate your superpowers if you're looking for an NCP parlance.
Well,
right?
and Kalani can use it to essentially activate a battle. Well, not activate. Make a battle droid do a little move and either shoot or hunker down or get a thing taken off of them. Yeah. So, like, it's kind of like your limited resource, but at the same time, always gives you a little bit of a bump. And then once you've gone through your Shatterpoint deck, you replenish them.
You refresh them all, yeah. I will say I like this mechanic a lot more than the tactics cards in Crisis Protocol. The tactics cards just add an extra level of complexity that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
I like the idea that these are what allow you to activate your more powerful abilities.
Yes.
And you have a lot more control over them, and I don't feel as limited with them, which is really nice. So yeah, I'm actually a big fan of the Force mechanics. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they kind of expand and what else they can do with other various characters.
Jedis and Inquisitors coming down the pipe, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Ewoks are clearly powerful in the Force, right?
Yeah. Well, the Force will change everything, right? Cannibals can do anything.
Exactly. So, but yeah, so So we've kind of talked about the mechanics a little bit. We've talked about the way the game plays. We've talked about the components. So in the end, like I know you kind of buried the lead at the very start of it all, but do you like it?
Well, so the game, no, I hate it. No, I was talking about your idea about talking about if we liked it at the end. No,
Oh, okay.
no, actually, no. I enjoyed the game. It was the start of the game made me feel like the game was over, and it definitely has its ebbs and flows. I definitely want to play another game of it before I really give like a, oh yeah, I definitely like this, or I
That's
definitely
fair.
don't like this. I definitely would like to play a game without battle droids because I appreciate they exist, and I would love for them to do something else with a different model. I'm definitely thinking about like Magna Guards or something. But
Yes, they look cool.
yeah, I'm actually excited for seeing some other characters on here because I definitely felt all four primaries in this game or in the base game all did something crazy depending on what turn it was. So
Yeah, like Anakin crazily flopped that one game, that one round, and Asajj just
whoa,
dummy
whoa,
dumb.
he fell onto her lightsaber. Okay, it's not her fault.
Clearly. I think somewhere along the thing, Jar Jar was hanging around and just tripped him up. Darth Jar Jar for the win, right?
Yeah.
Uh, no, that's really cool. So I'm not going to mince words. I was starting to get really worried about the game.
Yep.
I was excited at the very beginning of it all.
Yep.
The more that we saw coming out for it, I was starting to get some worry here and there. I wasn't quite sure how I felt about the activations. The squad building had me a little worried as well. So I had my reservations about the game. Having played it and gotten on the table, I think it flows nicely.
Yep.
I think there is definitely a lot of potential for some really cool moments that feel like Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like Anakin completely being a diva and flopping. I think there's a lot of strong potential with this game, and my interest has been reinvigorated with it, which I'm very happy to say is the case.
I kind of feel the same way. Like I definitely had a lot of reservations when I was looking at uninteresting terrain with models I'm definitely going to break. Uh,
Oh
is
yeah, I think we're gonna have a running bet on who breaks the first
Yeah,
lightsaber.
I don't want to win. I don't want to win.
I don't want to win either.
But I
It
do.
just becomes a lightsaber that's turned off.
Yeah. I also would like to put out there that like one of the other problems I had is this game just another Legion? Especially when I saw battle droids and clone troopers. Is this something to replace Legion? Not at all. I think this is definitely a skirmish game. I kind of wish that we had the Theed Palace terrain, and this was Newt Gunray as a primary with Kalani and some battle droids
Oh, that'd be
versus
nice. Yeah.
Qui-Gon and a young Obi-Wan. That would
I
be
hope we see a Qui-Gon model.
well, and a young Obi-Wan's got to be a secondary, right? So, but yeah, and then
Apparently,
like,
old Obi-Wan is a secondary too.
well, when you get older, you know how it is, right? The kids take over.
No, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of really cool potential with where they can expand out with the characters
Yeah.
in the game and get those really cool visual moments. I'm really glad you actually touched on how you felt like where this stands in relation to Legion, because it's definitely a skirmish game.
Yeah.
I think if you're looking for those mass battles of Star Wars, Legion is still where it's at for you.
Yep. And I'm going to go ahead and say every single duel I've seen in Legion has usually ended with one person just gets shanked and it's not much of a fight, whereas this definitely felt like these were fights going back and forth and people were dodging in and out of things and definitely letting other people die for their sins.
So here's what you do. You play a game of Legion. When two of your heroes meet, you actually switch over to a game of Shatterpoint, and you duke it out there. Then you go back to...
I like it.
It's a game within a game within a game, right? Yeah, so it's very cool. I think there's a lot of really cool potential. As far as where it stands with other skirmish games right now, I think AMG is really flexing their muscles with this one right now. I think we're seeing some really solid design space that they are occupying. I think they're actually doing a lot to push skirmish games forward.
I think so too. I definitely think some previous games have kind of slept on a lot of innovation, and I definitely feel like AMG is both trying new things and kind of creating a cut above.
So I'm gonna be a little bold with this statement.
Oh,
I think a lot of companies are chasing Games Workshop,
yeah,
and we see a lot of similarities in that. And as a result, what we see is either a lot of similarities where it feels like it's maybe like Warhammer Light type thing,
sure.
or they get into a weird design space where they just go so crazy with different design elements that it almost feels overwhelming. And I think that's why we see so many skirmish games sort of come and go. Like there's a lot of small indie skirmish games, and only a handful tend to stick around, right?
Yeah.
But the ones that stick around, they're the ones that are pushing the envelope.
Yep.
They're the ones that are trying to get into new design space. And I think AMG is in that area because we've seen something very interesting with Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Yep.
And now we've seen something very interesting with Shatterpoint where I feel like the player stays constantly engaged with the game.
And there's very few games that are easily assessed at what point you've lost the game.
Right. And I would actually say with this one and Crisis Protocol for that matter, there's very few instances where I feel like it is clear someone is just out.
Yeah.
Right. If you're of equal skill value between two players, I think it's very easy to really go right to the wire with the games.
I agree.
Which I think is very exciting. I think that's absolutely great. And I will say this: I love that this game, it respects your time. I don't think that there's any real bloat with it. I think it's very snappy. I think churn order goes very nice and quickly. The fact that you can only ever do one action, like you can't repeat actions, means that you're not getting bogged down. Well, I'm just going to stay put and attack you twice. There's always movement happening. There's always actions happening, and as a result, it kept me engaged.
Yep.
The whole time.
I agree.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, I think overall, I think both of us are coming off rather positively on the game.
Yeah, it definitely could have a couple little things that I'd tweak. And when I say that, I mean there are literally things that AMG can release over the next little bit that'll make the things that I'm currently upset about or doesn't feel right just feel better. And it might actually be sitting over in a box not far away from us already. Yeah. Specifically, I love Obi-Wan and I love Dooku, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But exactly. I'd love to see some new terrain and stuff that's very Star Wars based. But
the reactor from Naboo.
Ooh, wow. There's a lot to unpack on that side of it.
So many platforms for us to knock over.
Anyways, I love the characters. I like the cards. I like the mechanics. I like the gameplay flow. It
has a lot going for it.
Yeah.
And much like a certain chancellor, we shall be watching the career with great interest as we go forward. So you know what? Do you have any closing thoughts?
Go to your local gaming store and see if sometime after June 2nd they have a demo copy or something.
Yeah, support your LGS. Definitely go find your local store, bug them for it, and try and get it on the table.
Yeah.
Roll some dice, see how you feel about it, because that is always going to be the best way to determine if you like games or not. And honestly, it's also the best way to determine whether or not we see more games like this.
Yes.
So yeah, definitely go support your local game store. I know we have a very supportive local game store.
Very lucky.
We're very lucky in that regard. Even if the two of us had to beat a little bit of sense into the current owner operator for that one. But no, we're very lucky. We get a lot of support from him on that regard. And so go support your local game stores. And so as far as closing thoughts for me on this one, I like it. I think it's snappy. I think it plays very well, and it embodies what I kind of felt a Star Wars game should embody.
Awesome.
And I think in the end, that is the part that excites me most now that I've gotten it on the table. The mechanics are solid, the models are great, and I feel like I'm swinging a lightsaber around sometimes with it. And that's just good fun. But you know what? Sound off below. Leave your comments below. What are you excited for in this game? And yeah, let's get that conversation going. And remember, guys, if you want to support the channel, hit up patreon.com/AegisBrand $1 a month keeps the channel going, helps us know what's working and all that sort of stuff. And it gives you some extra avenues to interact with myself here as well. If we get a couple more Patreon members, probably going to be opening up a Discord for all that community needs as well. But yeah, so sound off below, and we will see you next time. Happy wargaming.